Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa Perez. I'm a consultant at Human Capital Growth, and I've been working closely with Shreya to build and now facilitate this Data Science for HR series. Welcome to our informational video.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shreya Sarkarbarni, CEO of Human Capital Growth and Alyssa's colleague. I'm looking forward to co-facilitating this workshop on data science for HR. It's an area that we're seeing a huge need for and not a lot of offerings that is very specific to HR. So Alyssa and I have been designing this workshop for you, and in this information video, we'll talk a little bit about what you can expect in this workshop series.
Yes, and to do so, as Shreya mentioned, we're going to talk about kind of some questions that you might have regarding the content of the workshop. And to start off, I'd like to ask Shreya, what prompted you to want to create this Data Science for HR workshop?
So what was happening, Alyssa, is as you know, we do a lot of analytics work. In fact, in 2001, that's how Human Capital Growth got started. What we're finding is even the most high technology firms here in the Bay Area that have a lot of data related to the business, they're struggling when it comes to data about people, so their HR data, and then trying to answer questions that the business has that's not related to administration. So a lot of them are good with data related to things like compensation or turnover, but not necessarily with things like leadership. Where is our leadership risk, or are we hiring better quality talent? And those require a different way of thinking about data. And that's the reason why we built this program that is very specific to HR and how to think of HR activities in terms of numbers and analytics.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Definitely there's a need there. So it's really cool to be a part of this whole process. So if I was going to participate in this Data Science for HR workshop, what would I be able to expect to gain from it? What would I learn?
You can expect to learn three key things. One is how to think of HR work in terms of numbers. Now, many might ask, well, that's why we have HRIS systems. What we're finding is HRIS systems are counting activities, things that can be counted. What leaders are asking for is how to measure abstract concepts, things like well-being, things like trust, conflict, risk mitigation, leadership. All of these things can be quantified, but it requires a different way of thinking that can be learned. And in this workshop, our goal is to teach our participants how to think of their work in terms of numbers and then quantify that. So the second thing they'll learn is how to compute the most common statistics that industry uses, things like descriptive statistics, mean, median, mode, variability, which is extremely important, things like standard deviation, correlation, and how to extract the most information from these numbers. So the third part is not only to extract this information from the data, from insights that they're producing, but also how to be a smart consumer of analytics that is being created for them. That's another area where we see a huge need, where the insights that are embodied in any kind of data set is so vast. And we see that most industry uses only 10% or less of that insight. And we want to be able to help our participants extract more information in terms of the entire group or the sample that may have provided the data, and not just the individual number that they're looking.
Yeah, and if I might add also, in creating and working with you on this, I've noticed, and perhaps the most exciting thing for me, is I've noticed this idea that we kind of talked about, that you mentioned, this language of numbers, this speaking and thinking in numbers. I think that's kind of a key learning element of this workshop, because a lot of people probably have a little bit of anxiety around working with numbers. Anything with math or statistics can be intimidating, especially to those who don't have a lot of formal statistical training. But I think the way that you talked about this and the way that we've worked on building it in this workshop has really emphasized thinking of it as a language and how you think, and getting people more comfortable with using these numbers in a way that it's not intimidating. It's not something that is difficult for people to learn. It's just a matter of kind of changing the way you think about it to help you use it in the best possible way. And I think that's really exciting um, as part of this whole workshop.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and that's clearly the goal. What we're finding is that engineers think in terms of activity. It's only HR that is in this very unique place to think of human behavior in terms of numbers. And therefore, what we are hoping for is that we are able to help HR answer the questions that business is asking for. They historically have not had the data, but after this taking this workshop, our goal is to equip you with the tools required to gather the right kinds of data and then do the analytics.
Right. Yeah, it's really exciting stuff. So kind of building on that, and what we can learn from this workshop and what it has to offer, what would you say, or how I should say, how is this data science for HR workshop different than others that might be out there in the marketplace?
We've been looking at what is available in the marketplace. You'll find a lot of courses out there, particularly in the universities and other institutions that are offering it. What we're seeing a lot of is courses on the mechanics, courses on, how do you learn to program in Python or R, or work with massive databases in Hadoop and other software, but not a whole lot in terms of equipping individuals to collect the data. And oftentimes what we see is the questions that are pertinent come up very, very quickly, especially as it relates to HR. And human resource professionals, particularly business partners, are in the best place to collect that data and generate timely insights. And they're the ones who need to have the skills, not just the people whose jobs say analytics. And the gap that we are filling here is that we are equipping you to collect data that otherwise would be missed because it's not a large data set, but it's very timely and business relevant. And that would otherwise be a missed opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, that is really important. And kind of going back again to what we were talking about before, that it's something that is not, it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be something you can't do. It can be something you really, get this experience and this insight and how to use it to maximize, your benefits to your organization. So I think that's really, really important. That's something that we're going to offer here. Um, and if you were to suggest for anyone to take this workshop, who do you think should consider taking it?
Our ideal participants are clearly those who are fielding questions from leaders. And leaders are asking questions such as, are we hiring better quality talent? Are people getting better after going through our development programs? And these are usually the HR business partners or those who are working in the talent management field. They would be our ideal participants, people working with HR analytics. They are also among our target audience group. And so, I'm going to ask you a question, Alyssa, since you've done a pilot of this workshop already with some of our learners who are getting certified through us. What have you learned in terms of who can benefit? What's the prereq to coming into this curriculum?
I think that is one of the most exciting things about this workshop is that I'm not sure if there's necessarily a prerequisite to this to coming into it. There are people who have a lot of statistical experience, and there are people who have a lot less statistical and analytical experience who could benefit from this workshop. It is designed in such a way that we're going to start with the basics and build from there. So if someone is not so familiar with a lot of statistical concepts, it's not going to just throw you into the fire without any build backup or background on it. But there's still a lot to the way it is designed and the perspective that we're offering that's really unique and different, and provides kind of a perspective that I personally haven't ever seen before on how to look at data and how to think about data. So if you come to it with no experience, you're not going to deal with the confusion because we have all of the information there. But if you come into it with experience, you're still going to benefit a lot from it because there is just a completely new way of thinking about data that's provided by this. And we know this because we did pilot it, as you mentioned, and some of our learners were more advanced and they were familiar with a lot of the base concepts we talked about, but they expressed to me that this was kind of a whole new way of thinking about it, and they learned some new pieces that they'd never thought of or heard of before, despite having even PhD level educations with statistics. So it's really exciting because this course, this workshop, is honestly useful to anyone who's working with data.
That's great. It's very exciting. And I think some of our experience teaching all the way from graduate students to undergrads who have had no background in statistics, we've pulled in all of those insights when we started to build this workshop, and also try to make it very, very practical. Working in industry, find that a lot of times our audience understands how to compute, how the mechanics of computing a mean. But what does that really mean, and how to extract the most information, and when should one use a particular statistic? That's the knowledge and insight that we find people often struggle with. And so we've made it very, very application focused. You're not just going to be learning statistical formula, but you'll be learning real world. How do these problems come up, and how to translate that problem into a number question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. It's definitely a mixture of the mechanical side and the practical side coming together so you can really get the most from your data.
That's great. So, Alyssa, in closing, what will our participants be able to do after completing the workshop?
Well, as you mentioned, we designed it to be very hands-on. So we are hoping that through the process of doing it, not just after doing it, but while doing it, these participants will be getting their hands dirty, so to speak, on really dealing with data, really practicing all of the skills we're talking about. We have pre-work that they're going to do. We have work that we're going to do with them throughout the workshops, and every single lesson has a different topic and a different kind of data type that we're going to talk about, and they'll be using some of their own data as well. So we expect that throughout, and especially once they've completed the workshop, they would be able to make their own databases, find data that they already have that exists, clean it, manage it, get all of these statistics that they need out of it, understand what those statistics mean, make the best decisions around their data, whether they're collecting new data or working with old data. They're going to have the skills to make the right choices, to keep it organized, and to really extract that information that they need, and that to answer those questions that their organizations are asking them. So we really do believe in this workshop, and we're really excited to see some participants joining us soon.
Wonderful. I'm really excited. You know, the one thing I will add to that is the whole data visualization piece and data
Right.
storytelling.
Yes.
That is so key to help your stakeholders make the right decisions. And we have an entire workshop on the 4-part series that is just dedicated to visualization and storytelling. So
Mm-hmm.
I hope you join us, and we look forward to seeing you in the workshop.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa.